everyone. This is Chrystal with Chrystal Lynn Astrology coming to you from Southern California. Thank you for joining me again for my third Astro-Cast. Instead of a podcast, this is my Astro-Cast. Just where I talk about some important topics, but focusing mainly on the 21st century woman. This woman, who is she? How does she influence us in the world as we're moving into this new world, this new heaven, this new earth, the age of Aquarius? And so, yes, I'm talking about, a specific woman, but I'm also talking about how this woman influences all the other women as well in a positive way. Every moment has every how can I put this? Every character has its moment in life. And this character right now as we speak is this woman as she's rising. She's a prototype of a woman that we're all looking up to, that we're all trying to be, that we're all trying to understand. Now, in my last Astro-Cast, I was listening back to it, and I had mentioned about this woman being a nurturing woman, a caretaker. And as I was saying that, as I listened back to myself, I thought, wow, that could really be a trigger for a lot of other women. What do you mean? That aren't we coming out of having to be caretake for everybody else? Aren't we coming out of having to do those things? Isn't it all about us now as women, and we can just leave our kids with somebody else and we can just go do our thing, and we don't have to be accountable for decisions we've made because we now want something else, and whatever we want is what we get? That just doesn't feel right to me. That's just not resonating with my traditional upbringing, shall I say. And I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater in terms of my traditional upbringing. Being that we're moving into this new generational shift, it doesn't mean that we throw everything out of what we've learned. I mean, my mother, she is still here at 82 years old. And she comes from the Neptune and Virgo generation. I'm in the Neptune and Scorpio generation. But I still have the influence of my mother in my life, which means that influence is necessary for the woman that I am to be. And I've always been a caretaker and a nurturer. It's probably the Virgo energy. I'm a Virgo. But this is the Pluto and Virgo generation that's coming up. And that's because Pluto and Capricorn, okay, let's go here. Pluto and Capricorn is triggering the Pluto and Virgo generation. It's, they're sister signs, okay, because it's the earth signs. They hold hands, okay? And so we've got these two signs being triggered. And so Capricorn, being the government, is telling this Pluto and Virgo generation, those of us born in the 1960s, that we're the next women to take the stand, to step up into authority. And eventually it'll be the women after us and the women after us. Everybody has their position. Everybody has their place. But you can't push it too early, because if you're talking about things that you know nothing about because other people are talking about them, but you haven't truly experienced them, then it's going to really be like this kind of disconnect. And we have so many teachers and gurus and spiritual people that say they want to be teachers or, want to be leaders. And yet they're really just telling their own story. They're projecting their own stories onto everyone else as if it's their story. And they're some kind of guru and teacher, but it's really their own story, right? And maybe we all do that. It's possible that we all do that. But at the same time, if we're wanting to be a vessel, because see, this woman of the 21st century, this woman who's a mature, wise woman, she knows that her body, part of the function of her body is to be a vessel from something greater and bigger than herself. Whether it be a god, whether it be a spirit, whether it be channeling to other planets or energies, or whatever the feeling is, there is something being passed down from one vibration to another, from one woman to another. What is that? And that's what we're all discovering. How can we each play a role in this story? Now, for those of you who are younger, say maybe in your later 20s, just hitting your first Saturn, or early 30s, mid 30s, you're coming upon this awareness now. But you're not really going to hit your North Node energy. We don't, in my experience, with my personal experience and my experience in doing readings and studying this, most people don't start hitting their North Node energy until they're hitting about 35, 37, 38, 40. You're just tasting it. It's like trickling down to you. It's like a concept and idea, but not until you hit your first Uranus, opposing Uranus, from 42 to 48, do you really connect with your North Node. So it's just a concept right now. You're still heavily connected to your South Node. A lot of people talk a lot about the North and South Node, but there's so much more in-depth discussions to be had about it that I hope to do in the future as well. So we'll hang on to that concept. But just know that, as women, we need people to look up to. And if you're a younger woman and you have not learned the gift of reciprocation and the gift of honoring the women and your mentors above you and respecting somebody else above you and being willing to be taught from someone else above you, then you'll never grow. You'll be stuck in this kind of self-righteous, kind of immature, I'm like a teenager, but I'm in a 40-year-old body mentality. Nobody can tell me nothing because I know everything. That mentality is the scariest mentality that's out there as far as I'm concerned as a woman. I've had a lot of mentors in my life from my working with horses, and I've had a lot of older people over me, and I've sat under a lot of teachings in my astrology. I've sat under Stephen Forrest. Again, with my animal work, I've sat and studied under the best horsemen in the world. These are famous horsemen that have written books I've studied with. And when you study under these people, you listen, you be quiet, you wait for them to talk because you want anything they can say is you're so privileged, and it's life-changing. So if you don't have people like that in your life, or a feeling of somebody like that in your life, a lot of times people, would want that with their mother or an older sister or somebody. And, with our breakdown of our families, we don't have that. But in our spiritual community, if there's one person that truly understands you, then that should be a person. Not the person that, talks up your ass, not the person that blows your head up and says whatever you want to hear, but the person that's going to tell you the truth, but that loves you so unconditionally. Like, who is that friend? Who is that person? Do you have somebody like that in your life? So anyway, the other last thing I want to say is I got a couple comments, so thank you guys very much. One comment was just that that they love the YouTube series. So I hope you guys are enjoying this. Please do comment, because it really does help me continue on. It's like the spark that keeps the fire going. So even just, hey, thanks, or hey, I love it, or hey, I hate it, or whatever, just to kind of keep the conversation going. I'd love to hear from you. One comment I got was, marriage is on the decline. Why is that? Now, that's kind of a whole nother topic, which I will probably do for the next episode 4 series. But let's discuss it, introduce it just a little bit, and talk about marriage. Remember, we're in this weird time warp right now, because those that are raised that were born in the 60s and raised to the 80s and the 90s still really kind of have this traditional kind of old school marriage mentality. The Pluto and Virgo generation, women are still comfortable with serving their husbands, with having dinner on the table, with paying the bills, with, taking the clothes to the dry cleaners, because Virgo is all about service. So Virgo energy, that generation, we love to serve one another. If you take that away from us and you tell us just to be self-absorbed and selfish, we'll be depressed and miserable. It's in our giving and in our serving that we find our peace and joy and our solitude. And so often you hear, especially young people today, who are learning to maybe let go of that. Maybe for them, having that ability to serve and nurture someone else is very uncomfortable, and they're very rebellious to it. And they see a man that, hey, I'm not going to rub your feet, rub your own feet. You know, I'm not going to take your boots off. Take your own boots off after they've worked 12 hours for the family that day out in the construction field. I'm an old school woman. If my husband's out there working in the field and he's worked all day and he comes home sweating, I hope I have dinner for him, and I'm going to take his boots off. I'm going to rub his feet. I'm going to baby him, and I'm going to be grateful. That's how I, as a Pluto and Virgo generation woman and a Sun Jupiter Virgo woman, that's how I express my gratitude, is in serving. But, you know, just like in the Bible when, you know, Mary, you know, put perfume on Jesus's feet and rubbed and the oil on him to give back to him for what he was giving. And so it's a beautiful thing. So I hope that in this new age of women rising, these new queens that don't even have a queendom, that are rising, that they don't forget that in service and in this beautiful, beautiful exchange, that there's something golden, and not to completely lose that. At the same time, the women that are rising up, like even my daughter, she's 23, and I'm like, don't rush to get married. She's got her career. She went to school. She's got her, you know, bachelor's degree. She's snow skiing. She's, you know, playing volleyball, and she's taking her time to really get involved with the, you know, the whole relationship. And that's her generation, the 90s. Okay. So, you know, we've got the 80s, the 90s. So again, these are all topics we'll talk about. But it's as far as why is marriage on the decline, let's talk about that. If you guys have any thoughts for the future videos, let me know. I think marriage is on the decline because the definition of marriage is on the decline. The definition of marriage is so confusing now. And we each have to realize that each generation brings in their contribution to the ideals of relationships. And yes, we often have to learn to live the opposite of those things, but we're not throwing out those ideals, because those are the ideals we are here to explore to the fullest. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that's interesting. It's interesting to me. I love you guys. Thank you so much. And I will see you in episode 4. Hope to hear from you.